Ever find yourself just glued to the news, watching a story unfold and thinking, wow, someone's life is about to get really interesting?
Yeah, definitely.
That's kind of what we're diving into today, actually.
Oh,
The story of K.M.M. Siriwardena.
okay.
He's Sri Lanka's newly appointed finance secretary.
Interesting.
And we're using a recent episode of Trendline for this.
Trendline, okay.
It's a Sri Lankan podcast, kind of like their pulse on current events
Gotcha.
to,
Understand.
understand why this appointment's making headlines.
And it's no ordinary appointment.
Right.
You see, Sri Lanka's economy is,
Oh, yeah.
it's going through a bit of a,
Yeah.
let's call it a turbulent phase.
Exactly. It's like someone handed you the controls to a plane, in the middle of a storm cloud. So who is this Siriwardena?
Right.
And why is he the one everyone's looking to?
Well, the Trendline hosts, they painted this picture of someone who's far from a rookie,
Okay.
over 30 years at the Central Bank of Sri Lanka,
Wow.
holding positions like, deputy governor, director of economic research.
Okay, so he's seen the inner workings of their financial system.
Right.
That's got to be crucial.
Absolutely. But it's more than that.
Oh.
His resume boasts, experience on the global stage, too.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He was an alternate executive director at the IMF, representing a whole block of countries, including Sri Lanka.
Wow. Talk about a pressure cooker environment. I'm
Yeah.
sensing a been there, done that kind of vibe.
You got it. And it's interesting because the podcast hosts highlighted how this IMF experience in particular could be key.
Oh, how so?
Think about it. Sri Lanka's dealing with foreign debt, right?
Yeah.
Who better to navigate those waters than someone who's been on the IMF side of the table?
Okay, that's fascinating. It's like he's got this insider knowledge of how these international financial powerhouses operate.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And if that wasn't enough,
There's more.
Trendline pointed out that Siriwardena is no stranger to the finance ministry itself.
Oh, right.
He's held positions there before.
So he's not walking into this completely blind.
Right.
He knows the players, the pressures.
Exactly.
Oh, no.
But
Yeah.
as the podcast hosts pointed out,
Mhm.
experience alone doesn't guarantee success.
For sure.
This is Sri Lanka, Right.
Their economy is facing some serious headwinds, and some of these issues they're deeply rooted.
You're right. We can't gloss over those challenges. It's
Right.
one thing to have the experience, but it's another entirely to navigate the actual situation on the ground.
Yeah.
So let's dive into that a bit more. What's at the top of Siriwardena's to-do list?
Well, based on what the Trendline hosts discussed,
Okay.
the biggest challenge is probably managing Sri Lanka's foreign debt.
Right.
It's like a balancing act.
Yeah.
They're trying to keep their creditors happy,
Right.
while also making sure they can afford to, to fund essential services for their citizens.
So it's not just about the raw numbers.
You're right.
It's also about making sure people aren't left behind.
Exactly.
Yeah. And you can't ignore the impact of inflation either.
Oh, of course not. Yeah.
Imagine trying to plan your budget when the price of food and fuel is, rising at a dizzying rate.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the reality for a lot of Sri Lankans right now.
It's like a double whammy.
Yeah.
You're dealing with this huge debt burden. AED prices are going up.
Right.
I can't even imagine.
And Trendline emphasized the importance of navigating international relations, particularly
Yeah.
with, institutions like the IMF.
Right. Yeah.
It's not just about getting money,
Right.
It's about how you manage those relationships in a way that keeps the country's economy afloat.
So it's like this delicate dance
Yeah.
between maintaining their economic sovereignty
Yeah.
and getting the support they need.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's really fascinating how those two things intersect.
You're right. It's a complex situation, and there's a lot at stake.
For sure.
The podcast hosts mentioned how Siriwardena's experience with the IMF
Yeah.
could be really key to securing much needed financial aid.
Okay, so he's essentially the one who's going to have to convince those international institutions that Sri Lanka is a good bet for their investment.
Yeah.
I'm starting to see why everyone's watching this so closely.
And let's not forget the political aspect of this whole thing.
Oh, right.
A Trendline host touched on the fact that,
Yeah.
there's always going to be scrutiny on the finance secretary,
Yeah.
especially in times of economic hardship.
Yeah.
It's a high-profile position.
Oh, yeah?
With everyone, looking for answers,
Yeah.
everyone wanting to see results.
Like, He's got to perform a financial miracle
Yeah.
while also being a diplomat and a politician at the same time.
Well,
No pressure.
Well, as they say, there's never a dull moment in the world of economics.
That's very true.
But you're right. It's a huge undertaking.
Yeah.
The podcast hosts seem to think, he's qualified,
Right.
and that his background suggests that he's the kind of figure who inspires stability.
Mm-hmm.
But only time will tell if he can really deliver on those expectations.
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
But you know what I found most intriguing about this whole thing?
What's that?
The podcast hosts, they hinted at this idea that Siriwardena is more of a technocrat than a politician.
Okay.
He's known for his deep understanding of economics,
Right.
not for his ability to, play the political game.
No, that's a really interesting point.
Yeah.
You see, in a situation like this, you could argue that both those skills are vital.
Right.
You need someone who can, grasp the intricate details of economic policy,
Yeah.
but also someone who can navigate the political realities of implementing those policies.
So it's not a simple choice between one or the other.
Right.
It's about finding the right balance.
Exactly. And it's fascinating to consider the implications of this particular appointment,
Mm-hmm.
Does Sri Lanka need a politician who's good at, rallying support?
Yeah.
Or do they need a technocrat who can bring about the necessary economic reforms?
It's like this whole appointment is a fascinating experiment in leadership.
Yeah.
Can a technocrat, someone who maybe doesn't have that, traditional political instinct,
Right.
really thrive in such a politically charged environment?
That's the billion-dollar question, isn't it?
Right.
And it gets to the heart of how we view leadership in times of crisis. Do we want someone who's charismatic and can rally the masses, or someone who might be, less flashy,
Yeah.
but possesses this, deep expertise?
Right. It makes you wonder if there's even a right answer.
Right.
Maybe it depends on the specific challenges a country is facing.
Exactly. And in Sri Lanka's case, it's a particularly interesting question.
Yeah.
Because so much of their, economic recovery hinges on those international relationships we were talking about.
You mean with organizations like the IMF?
Precisely.
Okay.
Those relationships require a delicate touch, a deep understanding of global finance,
Right.
and probably a bit of political maneuvering as well.
So maybe what you really need is a bit of both.
Yeah.
A leader who can speak the language of economists and politicians.
It's certainly a skill set that's in high demand these days.
I bet.
And it'll be fascinating to see how Siriwardena navigates those waters.
Yeah.
He's someone who's, built a career on his economic expertise, but now he's stepping onto a stage where political acumen might be, just as crucial.
The high-stakes game, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And the Trendline hosts, they made it clear that the stakes aren't just these abstract economic indicators.
Right.
We're talking about the lives of millions of Sri Lankans who are directly impacted by these decisions.
Absolutely. It's a good reminder that behind every headline, every policy debate,
Yeah.
there are, human stories.
Right.
Families struggling to, put food on the table.
Yeah.
Businesses fighting to stay afloat.
It makes you realize that Siriwardena's success or failure
Yeah.
won't just be measured in, economic data,
Right.
but in the real world impact on people's lives.
Exactly. And I think that's what makes this whole story so compelling,
Yeah.
It's a reminder that economics isn't just about numbers on a spreadsheet.
Right.
It's about people, their livelihoods, their hopes for the future.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one thing you think our listeners should keep in mind about Siriwardena and the challenges he faces?
I think it's the importance of context.
Okay.
It's easy to get caught up in the headlines, the political drama,
Right.
but understanding the deeper economic realities, the historical context, the human stories. That's what allows us to truly grasp the significance of this moment for Sri Lanka.
Well said. And it's a good reminder that sometimes the most captivating stories are the ones unfolding right before our eyes in the world of finance and economics.
Yeah, definitely.
So keep an eye on Sri Lanka, folks, because this is a story that's far from over.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.